Aaron Beelner, and Eric B. And you're listening to the Diary of a Little Man's Podcast. All right, another episode of the Diary of the Little Man's Podcast. I am here sitting with the great man, Mr. Aaron Beelner. We'll go ahead and get this started so we can get going right off the bat. My name is Eric B.
I'm Aaron Beelner.
And this is the Diary of the Little Man's Podcast. Aaron, how are you? How's the Masters out in your area?
Chilly. It's fun to watch, though. I mean, I have never been to the actual Masters tournament. I have been to that course, seen it.
Yeah.
Never played on it. I've been to, my dad and I went years ago. Oh, God. This had to be like 04 or 05, maybe. We went to, there was a tournament at East Lake. There's a TPC tournament, I believe, every year at East Lake, which is kind of, east central of Atlanta, east central of the city, or the downtown, if you will. And that was fun, but it was cold then too. I remember that being, I don't know if that tournament's in March every year.
Yeah.
And so, here it's in the Southeast, it's give and take as far as the weather. So, right now the players are saying that, and of course we can all empathize. We're having, now today it's supposed to be a high of 73, but the last 2 days, the highs were like 55.
Yeah. Wow.
So, and overnights were like 33, 34, 35. So coming, starting in the morning or getting out, in the morning in 40-degree weather is, for some people that's like, oh, what are you complaining about? But when you're not used to playing, any type of sport, golf in 40-degree weather, I love the game. Yeah. I've been playing since I was, oh, wow, there's a story. I didn't even think of that. There's a story. Let's run with it. I started the idea of golf probably about 7 or 8 years old, as far as my dad was a member at the local course, and he played. And I mean, that was in a small town. You have a couple, when you think of like activities, physical activities, extracurricular, anything beyond a pub or a bar or what have you.
Yeah.
There was a bowling alley and there was a golf course.
That's it, right? That's all it was. Yeah.
That's it. And so, you're talking about a town of, at that time, I think a town of 1,200. Supposedly it's gotten bigger since then. But so he came home one night or one day after golf and evening, and he had a putter that somebody had broken in half. And I don't know if it was a frustrating situation or what have you, but so I got that putter. He at that time, like I said, 8, the putter fit me, even, broken in half. And so he had it regripped and, basically made it doable. And that's what I started golf with. I just had a putter. And then this is funny how this all, if my memory is on, there was a lost and found, in golf clubs. People would leave a golf club laying around the green or leave a golf club laying on the grounds somewhere. And if it hadn't been collected after so many months, or even a season,
you keep it. Yeah.
Yeah. Then they were like, who wants these or what, because it can't just keep collecting golf clubs, there'd be hundreds. And so that's how my golf set started. I had the putter and then a 5-iron and then a 3-wood. And these are all random different styles. And of course, because they're mixing, they're lost and found. And so, and back in the days, this would have been the 80s, like the mid 80s, early to mid 80s when this started for me. And so I remember, and not to get too technical into equipment, but I remember the 5-iron was a forged blade, meaning that most golfers, if you're not of a professional status, you're using what's called a cavity backed style irons cavity backed irons, and they're very forgiving. They're weighted and balanced in a way that if you don't hit dead center of that face every time, you can still have a pretty decent shot because of how they're weighted and where, like if you hit it on the toe of the club or you hit it on the heel, there's enough reinforcement there that you still have a fairly solid shot. Where most professionals are playing with a forged blade, if you will, which means if you hit it on the toe or you hit it on the heel or not dead center, the sweet spot.
Yeah, sweet spot.
If you don't hit it on the sweet spot, you're not going to get that shot. And so I learned to play, even though I went to cavity backs as soon as I got my own set. I learned to play with forged 5-iron.
Oh, wow.
And then I think a 7-iron came into my set, and then a 3-iron. So I had this mix and match set. I think I had like 6 or 7 clubs total until I was like 12 or 13. And there's this old concept in the game of golf. If you really want to learn the game, you would just take a 7-iron, not even a putter. Just take a 7-iron around the entire course. Play teeing off. Of course, you got to be careful. You don't want to be going too crazy on a putting green because they're very, sensitive. So you're not, taking a ridiculous swing to divot or tear up a putting green with a 7-iron, but you basically play the entire round with that. And what that does, and not to get too heavy into it, but as a little person learning the game as well, what that does is it teaches you to swing.
Yeah.
I think too often that, when people play a sport, any sport, they're expecting to play as well as what they see on television or what they hear about. And really each sport, and especially golf, and golf for me, what I loved about golf, as a man who was short-statured, as a kid who was short-statured, is, in all fairness, it was me against the course.
Exactly.
I was whatever I could perfect of my ability would be against the course, as opposed to, you could play against somebody. And I did. I played in high school, and I can talk about that later. But it was the idea that you're really playing yourself, and that if you keep your head into the game and you really, just focus and concentrate and play what you've learned, and you play at your best level for yourself, then you should be pleased with that. Yeah. You should be happy with that. And so at one point, I'm not there now. I would take probably a couple months to get back into that level. At one point, I had, no exaggeration, I was shooting probably in the lower 80s on a par 72. So anywhere from an 8 to like a 10 handicap.
Okay.
And for me, that was pretty decent. So, I mean, it's not phenomenal, but you're also talking about somebody who's on a good day hitting drives, maybe 200, 210 yards.
Wow.
And so it was a matter of, and this is for anybody, the old saying, you drive for show and you putt for dough.
Yeah.
The short game in golf is extremely crucial. The long game is important because you want to get to that short game. You want to be able to put yourself in a position where you can really work the short game. So I really had fun with that. And so when I started high school, I tried out for the team. I think here's the default of this. In my high school, where it was such a small class, whoever tried out was on the team.
Yeah, that's how my high school
they had positions, varsity and junior varsity, and by my sophomore year I was on the varsity team. I will say that. Nice. And was I phenomenal? No, but we were all just playing the game. And in 1994, so I played high school all 4 years in golf. And then, I graduated in 92. In 1994, my father and I and my late grandfather, I share this experience or this moment because it was so awesome, because my grandfather's been gone since 95, actually.
Oh, wow.
We played in a 3-person best shot, and it's kind of a scramble style tournament where you each tee off, and then you take the best shot of that, and then you play from that position, and you take the best shot of that and best shot that. And so very quickly, and then I'll wrap up on the golf and we can delve into something else.
No, I got a good golf story for you. So go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Well, I want to hear it. So very quickly, a couple things. In 1994, that tournament took place. It was in June. I can't remember the exact day. I remember it was there was a storm before that tournament, and I was working on that golf course as a greenskeeper.
Wow.
So we had to clean up the course and get everything ready for the next morning or that morning. And so my grandfather and my dad and I were playing in this as a team. And we parred the first hole. Okay, should have done better. We parred the second hole, which was one of the easier holes. It's a par 5. So we were disappointed. Yeah. We get to the third hole, and I had a 7-iron. It was a par 3. I took a nice swing, felt good about it. And it gets up on the green, and it's getting closer to the pin and closer to the pin. And that pin, where the flag was that day, where the cup was that day, was on a back corner where I know the greens fairly well still to this day. I can see all of them and feel all of them, but it was on a back corner where if the ball kept going, it would go down a little bit of a ravine and you wouldn't be able to see it.
Oh, wow.
But it looked like the ball went in.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh God, it might. So get up there. And what had happened, it stopped. The ball had stopped. So it got caught between the flag stick or the pin and the edge of the cup. And then there was a little wind, and eventually it fell in. It dropped. Wow. And so, in 1994, I got my first hole in one. Nice. Well, my grandfather was just absolutely like over the moon about that. He was super excited and it was a very cool experience. One of the fondest memories I have of my grandfather. And then on the next hole, it was another par 5. We are hitting our third shot into the green, and he rifles one at the green. And I'm thinking, oh God, by the time that gets done, it'll be way over the back and into the next hole. Even it hits the flagstick and falls in
on a par 5.
On a par 5. So we have an eagle. So I eagled a par 3 by having a hole in one. That's 2 under par. He eagles a par 5. So we're now 4 under just on 2 holes alone. It was just a really cool memory, and it was really fond memory. And I remember getting back to the clubhouse, and of course people are not, imagining that me, of all people, just hit a hole in one. And so, but I still have the golf ball. It was an Ultra 1. Nice. And I don't even know if Ultra makes golf balls anymore, but I still have the golf ball from 1994. Yeah. It was a really cool experience.
Nice.
Tell me your golf story.
I have 2. So the first one, I'll go back to high school and with my friend Eric. And if you guys don't remember, I have a friend who's a little person named Eric that was a good friend of mine in high school that taught me a lot of real life lessons about little people. So he encouraged me to play golf, and I was like, no way, dude, I'm not going to play golf. That's, we call that, a white man sport back then, right? It was like, I can't afford golf clubs. I was like, I'm not going to play golf. And he was like, you can use mine. And he had a set of golf clubs that was for kids. It was kids golf clubs, but he was good. He was really good. So him and I would go right before golf season. We would go to the Presidio, this little driving range into Presidio, and he would teach me how to, swing, the grip and all that. And so by the time golf came, I said, you know what, I'll go ahead and go play some golf. I have a buddy whose dad at the time, before he passed away, was a caddy at our Lake Merced golf course. So I reached out to him and I said, hey, I got $100. Can you get me a set of golf clubs? He goes, what are you looking for? I was like, whatever $100 can get me. I go, but I need all of them. So, exactly what you said. He gave me a bunch of, a Wilson this, a McGregor this, something that a starter would use, right? And, I wasn't into the Titleist or the Pings or anything like that, right? So he gives it to me. He gives me this weird green checkered bag. It was a bag. To me, I was like, hey, it's a bag, whatever, right? So we go and we start, we're talking to all the golf people. And of course, these high-end kids that has like the high-end golf clubs. And they're looking at me and Eric. They're like, oh wow, the circus is going to play with us this year.
Yeah, right.
You know, and
Right.
Eric, you know, me, I'm getting offended. I'm getting pissed, but Eric's like, yo, dude, don't let him get to you. Don't let him get to
Yeah.
you. So
Right.
we already knew who the good golfers were because, you know, they've been playing for a while. This is my senior year, Eric's junior year, and he's been playing, but he's never really, you know, given the chance to show that he can play till this year.
Mhm.
So we had one tournament where we had to team up. And, you know, I'm shooting decent, you know, for a guy who's never played golf. I'm probably shooting in like the 80s. You know, I'm not shooting like good, but I'm shooting in the 80s. Eric was actually shooting in the 70s. He was shooting like 75, 76 all the time. So he was my backup on everything. And so we had this one tournament, and this is my funny golf story. We had this one tournament. The cocky guys in our group and the cocky guys at the other schools were like, hey, let's let the circus freaks go first. And I'm like, yeah, you know, you guys shouldn't be talking that way. Sure enough, it was a windy day in San Francisco. We were playing at one of the most windiest course in San Francisco. And Eric comes up to me and he's like, come here. He wants me to bend down to his, you know, to his level. He goes, my dad always used to say, when it's breezy, swing it easy. And I said, what does that mean? He goes, these guys are jarheads and muscleheads. They're going to try to swing really hard to try to compensate the wind. He goes, but no, swing it slow. He goes, let's just play the short game for every course. So I'm like, okay. And this course was a 9-hole course. There was only one par 5. Everything was a par 3 or a par 4.
Okay.
And we were swinging it really, you know, I was swinging it maybe like in this par 3, we hit the green. And all the par 3s, we hit the green all the time because we were hitting it, you know, short.
Within regulation.
Regulations. These guys were trying to, you know, again, trying to go over the wind. Short story, we ended up winning that tournament, and we blew those guys out because they were like jarheads, musclehead golfers who were like, what'd you guys do? You know, how did you guys beat us? And then Eric told them, it's not the size that matters.
No.
He goes, it's up here. He goes,
Absolutely.
I knew what you guys were thinking. You guys were going to try to muscle us and try to swing hard when me and Eric just decided, hey, we're going to play the short game. If the wind takes it, then at least we didn't go over the cup or go over the green. So we did. We ended up winning the tournament. And, you know, the coach, our golf coach was like, hey, Eric, I never knew you played like this. Then he goes, Coach, I've been playing golf longer than you've been coaching golf. So by the next year, when I was already gone, Eric was like the top dog in golf. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was
so,
awesome.
You know, that's that adage of, I think it was Lee Trevino, who was a professional golfer years ago, retired now, of course, who said, you know, golf is 90% mental and the other 10%'s in your head.
Yes.
You know, and so it's that attitude of you play that game. Yes, I mean, granted, you have to have some physical ability to play the game, but you also have to really, there's a chess playing part of that game where you're thinking, you know, 2 or 3 shots ahead. You're thinking, where can I be?
Yeah.
Considering the elements, considering what I have to face, you know, whatever obstacles are on the hole alone, let alone the elements, if it's raining a little bit, if it's colder, if it's warmer, if it's windy. When it's breezy, swing easy. Absolutely. Because the other part of that is and just to add on to what Eric said, when you're doing that, you're keeping, you know, when you're playing it where you're trying to muscle every shot into win, it's going to own you. Yeah. And it's going to put the ball everywhere except where you want it. And if you're swinging it, you're keeping things low and you're not having, you know, you're playing like you said, not only the short game in you know, shorter yardage and on the greens, but also the short game in trajectory. Yeah. And so everything's nice and, you know, you're playing it almost like a links style course where it's, you know, you've got just open area, nice and easy, nothing to worry about. So to add, I moved to Georgia in '96 and was in a town about 2 hours south of here and he's actually passed away. I miss him dearly. He was an amazing professional club maker. and met this man. He was a retired Chief Master Sergeant from the Air Force. There's a military base, an Air Force military base about 2 hours south of Atlanta, and in a town called Warner Robins. And I met him in that town. And I talked to him. You were talking about different club brands. I had at the time, my first complete set was Top Flight. They were called Top Flight Plus, and they were steel shaft, and they were, of course, cut down, for me.
Yeah.
Well, when you cut a steel shaft down, I mean, there's some flexibility to that shaft, in its original state. But when you cut that shaft down, you're turning it in stiffer and stiffer, and it's like becomes a baseball bat, which then you're losing a part of the game. I mean, golf clubs are not supposed to be rigid. You're getting club head speed, you're getting torque, you're getting, velocity and centripetal force from the fact that the shaft of the longer part of the club is flexible. It should be flexible.
Yeah.
And so he asked me, his name was Dana Upshaw, rest his soul. He, an amazing, really great friend and a really smart man. And he had been working, he had left the Air Force, retired from the Air Force, and then started making golf clubs, just as a hobby, and then became a business.
Wow.
He got so good at it that he had his own store in the town, and Dana Golf was the name of it. Anyway, long story short, he asked me, he said, he looked at the clubs I had and he goes, "Do you have pain?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Like, do you have pain in your arms or like tendonitis?" And I said, "Yeah, I do actually." He goes, "Yeah, these are ridiculous. I mean, these are so rigid and stiff. I mean, I don't understand how you're, not like just sore after a round of it." He goes, "I'd like to work with you." So we made a deal. He said, "I want to work with you, and I'd like to do some research, and I want to submit what we do to the Professional Club Makers Society, the PCS, and I want to try to with the intention of applying or competing for Club Maker of the Year worldwide."
Wow.
And so I said, "Okay, let's do it." And I said, he said, "I'll make you the clubs at no cost. This will be a trade for me. I'm going to use, see what I can do." And so he ended up he had all these different pieces put together, from club heads that he found, shafts, grips. I had, for some reason, mid-sized grips. He's like, "These are way too big for your hands. I mean, you're taking any type of torque or any type of club head speed that you can do just by turning your hand a little bit when you swing. You're taking all of that away. It's like you're holding the fat end of a baseball bat." Yeah. So we got rid of those. I had this, like, the smallest grips that, you like adult male, but smallest ones they made so that I could get a better hold of the club. The shafts are like a senior style graphite shaft, that when he cut them down to fit me, they had so much more flexibility, but not too much, because I know you had talked about, Eric, I still had some good upper body strength. Yeah. So the last thing you want to do with a graphite shaft or any type of golf shaft is make it too whippy. Yeah. Because if it's too whippy, you lose all control. And then it's like you're swinging a noodle at the golf ball. And so he did all that. So long as, not to get too technical, and people are like, "Oh God, this is boring." After all of that said and done, and all of the work, and I still, the only clubs I have and use to this day, and never had pain from there on out in my arms. Nice. Or tendonitis. He won that year. Wow. He won Professional Club Maker of the World that year, and that would have been like 97 or 98. Okay. I think it was 1998, actually. He had runner-up or third place in the year before, and then with that, he had won the whole thing, and had. It's a really great honor, but it's also, there's so many fringes that come with it. So it was a great business card for him, because he had video. He was talking. Here I'm working with this man who has dwarfism. It was awesome. It was awesome. He has video, or someone does. He's like I said, passed away. Someone has video of the swing process that we went through and everything. And he said, and you talk about Eric, your friend. He goes, "I'm surprised he said you can handle certain club head weights that I wouldn't have thought you could maintain. And he pushed for, like, my putter's fairly heavy because he said you're very wristy as putter. You're slapping the ball everywhere.
Yeah.
And you need to even that out. And then he, like, my lower irons, my sand wedge, my wedge, they're heavier than you would expect, because he said you can really balance that, and that's going to give you better control. And then the one thing that's different is my driver. Every other club is measured to me. My driver is average length.
Okay.
I always use a regular, because it gets you one better club head speed. If you practice long enough, you can control it and keep fairly precise with it, and then get longer distances off the tee box. It's the difference between, I mean, if you're swinging a regular club, or if you were swinging like a snow shovel, I mean, just you're going to have better, torque and momentum and club head speed with the longer drivers. So that was probably, I mean, from, the high school moments, there were a couple moments that were really cool and impressionable that I'll remember. The time we played with my grandfather, I'll never forget for many, many reasons. And then working with Dana Upshaw, nice. And just he having the patience to work and learn, I mean, you're talking about a very unique stature.
Yeah.
I'm 4 feet 3 inches tall. I have, what's very typical with people of my type of dwarfism is that the arms are not as long, and my arm, if you can imagine, my arm doesn't straighten all the way out.
Yeah.
Kind of curled a little. And so take that into consideration as well. What can we do to maximize every square inch of your body, and also, what you have for arm speed and length. And so that, when you learn a sport like that, you're watching the masters and you're watching them with their notepads and they're literally calculating every turn. And other sports do this. You learn, I mean, there's science to every sport.
Yeah.
There's numbers involved with every sport. People think, oh, you just go out there and do it. But I've watched professional golfers. It's a chess match, and they're constantly calculating. And then if anything happens wind-wise, weather elements, it's different. They have to make different, add different variables. It's cool to watch people really do that well.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And so back to what I was saying is, and wrap up the game of golf, and we can move into a different sport if you wish, is that golf was always me against the course. Yeah. And that's what I loved about it, and took my time with it. And I think it blew people away that I and probably like Eric said, if you really put your head to it and you really stay focused, stature, yes, it's an element, but it's not like it is in any other sport.
Yeah.
The one other sport that I really enjoyed was racquetball.
Oh, wow.
I thought racquetball was a blur.
Yeah. I've seen it. I've never played it. Yeah.
Really love it. The thing about racquetball is precision too. Okay. The old adage is you hit them where they ain't.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't about beating, somebody can get into a racquetball court and just beat the snot out of the ball. Yeah. You can use physical force, but it was more about, like table tennis. It's where you place it.
Yeah.
You put it where they can't get to it, or you put it where, get it with some spin where they can't, see where it's coming or where it's going. And so when you can put those factors, a lot of sports like that. Yeah. There are. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a football player. I know that. I'm never going to play football. I'm not going to play professional basketball. I know that. Okay. I like basketball, and I played that in junior high. I did play. Nice. For a little bit, and they were nice enough to let me go out on the floor every once in a while. I have one story for basketball and one story for baseball, but I'll tell those later. But yeah, any sport where this is important, where the brain is important, those are fun.
Yeah.
Because then you're on not completely, but somewhat of a level playing field with the other competitors.
Yeah, you're right. That's how it is. It's all about what we think about first, and I'm a defensive coordinator for a high school football team, and I always tell them, be smart, don't be aggressive. Being aggressive can get you hurt. I go, I want you to go out there and, pancake somebody, but I want you to think about doing it before getting it done, So there's a thought process and there's an execution. That's usually what I tell them. If you're doing the execution before thinking about it, you're going to get hurt. the person's going to get hurt and someone's going to score a touchdown and it's not going to be us. So think,
Right.
then execute. So that's what I usually tell them. So
Yeah. Well, it's that work smart versus, I mean, granted, you got to work hard and practice and not, but when you're with any sport, football, basketball, baseball, there's a strategy. Yeah. I think too often people go, oh, you just go out there and you've got natural raw talent. And you're just amazing. Yeah. I think there's something to be said about that, but look at and I use basketball as a reference and I, with all due respect and rightfully so, look at a player like Larry Bird.
Yeah.
Who played the fundamental. I mean, if you match Larry Bird up to athletes of his day, the Magic Johnsons, later in the era, the Jordans, he's not physically going to hold up to them.
Yeah.
But he was one of the smartest basketball players in the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
And knew the fundamentals and knew the strategies so well. And there's a strategy to basketball. There's a strategy to everything.
Have you ever seen his documentary on basketball and how he grew up in Indiana?
French Lick.
He grew up there. His dad put up a basketball court, it's not even regulation, but it wasn't even concrete. It was like dirt, and he had to figure out, how far he was from the basket and all that. And then when he finally got to play on the gym floor, he just remembered. He says it every time I play on a court, I think of my yard. Because the calculations from where I'm standing to where that court is, it was, in my head. So that's what he was doing on the court. And that's why he was a smart, fundamental. Yeah, you're right. When you watched him play, and I was honored, I had the honor to actually watch him play, on TV, not live. But yeah, he knew the fundamental parts of the game, and this is one thing I hate about basketball now is it's who's bigger and who's better. And who can slam the ball, that's what I love about Stephen Curry. Stephen Curry's, average sized basketball player that doesn't need to slam the ball or, dunk the ball to show how good he is. He'll sit out there and hit a three on you, dribble around you, hit the three. And then, he's finally gotten the respect of a lot of the NBA players,
Right. And Steph Curry is very much of that same realm as Bird, where he's calculating and he's devising a plan each time and, finding those weaknesses in the defense and hitting them, where it hurts. And that to me is, you see the longevity of certain athletes and, there's the brawn, there's no doubt about it. There's the physical brawn but brawn cannot last forever.
No.
So you hit a point where if you don't have the brains of it, you're not gonna be able to compete. You're not gonna be able to hold up. Yeah. I think of like Nolan Ryan, who used to play for the Texas
Rangers.
Rangers, and was it the Rangers or the Astros?
He played for both.
I think it was the Rangers. He played for the both. Texas Rangers.
And
Did he play for both?
He played for both. Yeah. He pitched for both.
And here's a pitcher who's in his 40s, and he's holding his own. He's holding his own, but he wasn't throwing anything that was going to tear his arm up. Nope. He wasn't throwing ridiculous things. He just had great variables. He had a fastball, he had a curve, he had a knuckleball that was, pretty intense, and he knew how to use them at the right time. Yeah. The first time I ever saw, I'm an Atlanta Braves fan, and I'm from Iowa. Imagine that, but I've been a Braves fan since I was in. It's pretty ridiculous association. The first Little League team I played for was called the Braves.
Nice.
And for some reason I thought, attached to that. So I started following the actual professional team and then got hooked up. That was back in the day when Dale Murphy played.
Dale Murphy, yeah.
80s. And so, and my uncle, my late uncle, his name was Richard Majors. He passed away actually just this last summer, unfortunately, out of the middle of nowhere. Really awesome guy. I learned a lot about humility and being just all around balanced, great guy. And he was a huge Braves fan. And so, but I mentioned the Braves only to mention the great Greg Maddux.
Yes.
And this is back in, the 90s when Atlanta would win their division every year. Yeah. And they had an amazing rotation of Maddux and Glavine and Smoltz and then a few others. Wohlers was in there, and Maddox was not a fastball, 90 plus pitcher.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maddox was a finesse pitcher. Maddox was a placement pitcher. Maddox could mess with batters' heads
Yeah.
because he put it where they thought they could hit it. He always was working. And I think I have such a respect for that kind of athlete because of my stature. I have such a respect for the athletes who, don't get me wrong, I'm impressed with the brawn. I'm impressed with, everybody who can play smash mouth football, basketball, what have you. But I've always had such an amazing respect for the finesse players. And Maddox, Bird, Ryan,
Yeah.
those kind of guys.
Yeah.
Where it's like, they may not be the most athletic. They may not be the exact definition of amazing physical specimen, but they're ridiculously intelligent.
Yeah.
Is what they do.
And that's what it starts with. It starts with what you have up here. It starts with your brain and how you think of things. And Maddox was one of those guys that, in baseball terminology, he would mess with your head, He would throw you an inside pitch and he would make the hitter think like, oh, this guy's trying to hit me. And, he'd do that 2 times in a row. And now you're thinking, talk about chess match. The base pitchers are playing chess because they're making you think one thing. And then next thing you know, he'll throw 2 pitches where it's in the strike zone. Now this batter's like, okay, well, he just threw me 2 inside pitches. Now 1-2 down the middle. It's 2-2. What's he going to throw next?
Right.
And then he'll go right back inside. And the batter is thinking, okay, he's going to go outside or he's going to throw me a curveball. But he goes right back inside where the batter's thinking he's going to go, out. He swings on a, we call it a dumb pitch, right? Because it's like, dude, he just threw you 2 inside balls. Why'd you swing at that? And here's the batter like, damn it, why did I even swing? I mean,
exactly.
when I watched that rotation, that back in the days, I hated the Atlanta Braves just because of the rotating pitchers that they had. You mentioned the pitchers that they had. What I love about Atlanta Braves is their chant. Man, I grew up, like back then, it was always Atlanta Braves on TBS because, we're like Ted Turner station, right?
Yeah.
So they're always showing the Braves. And whenever I watch it, my dad would be like, what are you doing watching the Braves? I'm like, because I just want to hear the chant, And it's like, you would hear the chant. I have 2 hats that I hold dearly, and it was a Cleveland Indians hat from back in the days, and it was an Atlanta Braves hat from back in the days, just because those 2 teams were my 2 favorite teams outside of the Giants. And the reason why is their pitching rotation. I grew up wanting to be a pitcher, but I just didn't have that velocity. I didn't have the arm strength. I'm probably a pitcher if I had to back then, would be a closer because, I could only throw for 1 inning before I threw my arm out. But yeah, watching Maddox pitch back in the days was one of those like, wow, where's this guy from,
Yeah, we got him. I act like I'm on the team. He came from Chicago, So he was a Cub before he was a Brave. And we were very fortunate to get him in that trade. And it was fun to watch him. It was fun. And again, each one of those players was a different style. Yeah. Glavine, Smoltz, Maddox, and it was and that's what made, I think, a great pitching rotation is you had 3 different, Smoltz is very much a hardball pitcher.
Yeah.
And Glavine is a wonderful combination of both. And then Maddox was all about finesse and that messing with your head, like you said.
Yeah.
And I think, as a little person, there's, you talked about Eric, in different sports he's played and like wrestling and stuff. Getting into somebody's head is just as important as the physical capabilities when it comes to any type of sporting event.
Yeah.
Whether it be sitting down for a chess match or whether it be playing racquetball or whether it be playing basketball, football, even football. If you're in your opponent's head and they're spinning and they're trying to figure out what's going on or what you're doing, you're 2 or 3 legs ahead of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the more you can keep them off balanced, in their mental game, or off kilter in their mental game, the more likely you are to win.
Yeah.
And there are many great athletes who knew that very well. I mean, I know jack squat about boxing,
Yeah.
but I know that just watching Muhammad Ali play or hit,
Right.
you know, and have a match, he got into his opponent's head.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about physically beating them to a pulp. It was about getting into their heads.
Yep.
And, you know, when you have that aspect of whatever you're doing, whether it be sports, whether it be entertainment as an actor, whatever, when you're in that element where you got people thinking,
That's a good thing. Yeah.
You're gonna win.
Yeah.
And more often than not every time, of course, because there's, you know, always there's certain levels of defaults and errors, but you're gonna win. And as a little person, I played basketball in junior high. I knew I wasn't going to get to play in high school. I wasn't good enough. I mean, not just being stature wise, but it wasn't good enough. And I remember we had one tournament we were in, and I was one of the guards, and I was always the guard position. That was about the only place I could really go. And I remember we had a timeout, and the coach was like, "Can you just shoot? You're not shooting. Go ahead." So I got to the top of the key. I'll never forget this. And we were losing. We wasn't like it was the game-winning shot. But I put one up right at the top of the key behind the line, and it went in, and people went nuts. I don't think they thought I could shoot from there. I don't think they thought that I had a snowball's chance in hell of that working. And it went in. It wasn't a bank. It was all net. It was fun. It was a blast. And that became kind of the go-to of that particular game. But I've loved sports, and I've never, I mean, granted, yes, there are physical things that I obviously can't do. You're not going to see me in the pole vault or the high jump, but I've always tried to not let the physicalities deny me of attempting or enjoying any sport I've played. And, you know, I'll share this down. Remind me to tell you the Little League story that my dad was so proud of. But in anything that you do, no matter what, we're not all perfect specimens, or we'd all be in the professional sports.
Yeah.
So whatever your flaws are, or whatever your weaknesses are, you have to, and I think this applies to life. I think this applies to my career as an actor. Whatever your weaknesses are, you have to learn how to use them to the best of your ability.
Yep.
Okay. And turn those flaws into dangerous tools.
Yeah.
You know, whether it be sports, whether it be life, whether it be performance. You know, I have to get this baseball story out.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's hear that.
So we were talking about this before this show. There was, in my town, small town, there was T-ball, and then you played Little League, which was pitching, and then junior was called Pee-wees, usually T-ball or what have you. So we would do Pee-wees with junior high, and then you went on to high school. You either played in high school or you were done playing. You know, if you got on the high school team, great. And I never played in high school. I played through Pee-wees, which was basically 8th grade. So after 8th grade, junior high, you were, you know, either on the high school team if you were good enough, or you were done. So, but in Little League, I skipped T-ball. I didn't want to play T-ball. There was something about hitting off a tee, and probably should have played T-ball because, you know, just learning the game and being a little guy. But I skipped it, and they were concerned about that. I remember, like, the people running T-ball in Little League were like, "Are you sure you don't want to play in that?" I'm like, "No, I want to play Little League. I want to be pitched to." And so, and in all fairness, I don't think I had 1 or 2 hits the entire time I was in Little League. I got walked a lot, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And then the coaches would get hip to that. So I'd be like the leadoff. I'd get off on first right away, or I'd be the second or third. I was never cleanup, obviously, but I would be walked more often than not. So then there was a runner on base already. And then the chance of getting a couple easy runs right away was great, you know? And so, but the thing that stood out the most, I played second base and I caught. I wasn't much of an outfielder just because of the lack of speed. You know, I can move, but, you know, and also reach. You know, there's a lot to an outfielder in each position. There's a reason center field, you know, people play center field left and right. And but I caught. I caught. I was second base. I could handle shortstop. I wasn't. I didn't have the arm to play short or the turn
Yeah.
to play short. But so it was either second base or catch, and I loved catching. There was just something about catching that I really enjoyed. And in Little League, being such and such a height, I used the chest protect. I mean, I put the shin guards on, and they were too big. But I still had them on. But basically, the chest protector was like all encompassing for me. And so I would have that down to my feet damn near, and I'm squatting down. So it looks like an egg, if you will, with the catcher's mask on. But one particular play, now we're talking Little League. So I think they were like anywhere from 7 to 10 years old or 7 to 11 years old. And, every kid, there are some kids who are great. And then there are some kids who are out, picking daisies in the outfield and, staring at the sky. And I was catching for this game. And this kid somebody had hit, I think he was on second or even first. He could have been on first. And there was a batter who hit it to left. And the kid out in left field was no more in tune with the game. I think he was staring, at the cars driving by or people, whatever.
Yeah.
So the kid on first, and he was a sizable kid. He was solid, thick. And he's coming around. He gets the second. Kid's still out in left trying to retrieve the ball or looking at, I don't know. He gets the ball. The left fielder gets the ball. This kid's coming around third. The left fielder finally gets the ball in. I think it rolled in. And I pick it up and stand in front of this kid.
Yeah.
And I'm maybe up to his armpits.
Yeah.
I mean, he's average size and he's big. He's thick. And he rolls, right over me. It had to look like a steam locomotive going over a tricycle.
Yeah. And
I fall back, rear over ears, and just dust and everything. It was, and I remember hearing like the parents in the crowd or whoever was sitting in the seats. They're like, oh, just like, oh, and everybody knows everybody. So they're probably thinking, okay, Aaron's dead. Aaron's going to die today. Unfortunately, that was horrible. We're going to have to pause the game for a minute and collect his remains because he's got to be in pieces after this kid just rolled over him. I'm laying on my back. I remember this. I probably was eight or nine. I'm laying on my back. I've got the catcher's mitt. I'm right-handed, so catcher's mitt. I think I held it out like this in front of me.
Yeah. I
think for two reasons. One, I was hoping, protect the ball, of course, and two, praying to whoever, to God, praying for dear life that I don't die, because this kid's rocking right at me. He's coming. Dust settles. And I put my right hand in the air and I've got the ball in my hands.
Nice.
And everybody went nuts.
Nice.
And I did. I'm pretty sure they didn't think, one, that I was conscious.
Yeah.
Two, there's no way in hell that Aaron's holding on to the ball.
Yeah.
And I still had it. And of course he gets called out. They pick me up, dust me off. I remember the umpire who was, it's Little League and it's a small town. So the umpire was like the coordinator, one of the coordinators for the sport,
for
Little League baseball. He picks me up. I think he picked me up as if you would grab the chest protector, like literally lift me, stand me back up, and then start. It was hilarious. And I can laugh at it now. I think I was sore for a little while after that because I got drilled. I didn't go, it wasn't as exaggerated. I didn't roll all the way to the backstop or anything. It wasn't that horrendous, but I was flat on my back a couple feet behind home plate. Yeah. I was, I'm sure they were like, oh, we could just put the flowers right there on the grave. And so, it's those kind of moments where if you showed, especially as a little person, if you showed your determination, and your resilience, it made people respect you.
Yeah.
People went, hey, this little buckaroo can hold his own. And So I that's what I always tried for in any sport.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wasn't going to be phenomenal. I knew that. I wasn't going to be anywhere close to probably even mediocre, but I was going to be determined.
Yeah.
And of all the sports, golf I actually could, compete in. So yeah, I had more than just mediocre there because I learned, everything about the game that I could and played it to the best of my abilities. But for the other ones, basketball, baseball, I love volleyball. I mean,
Nice.
we didn't compete in volleyball. We didn't have
Yeah.
a men's or boys volleyball team, but I love that sport.
Yeah.
There's something about, I love digging, and I love, I love any type of sport where you've got the ability to think, but also the ability. I love team sports as well.
Yeah.
I love playing on a team. There's something about if you got everything gelling and you're really clicking.
Yeah.
You were on top of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, not to go on a diatribe, but anyway. But yeah, baseball. We didn't have if you wanted to play football, they had I don't know how this worked, and not to get into logistics. I went to a private school. I mean, a small private school. So it wasn't like it was, creme de la creme. It was very small, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Frugal, very frugal school. But if you wanted to play football, you could play for the public school that was in the town. You had to play on that team, which, I mean, who cares? If you want to play football, you want to play football.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't, of course, go out for that. You said Eric played football, right?
Yeah. No, Eric played all the sports. And when, again, like you just mentioned, he had to gain the respect of a lot of people. And when I was, again, fortunate enough to be by his side when he first started playing football, and the critics that he got, and I thought, and it's funny because it was football, baseball, then basketball. That's how the rotation was when we, or was it football, basketball, baseball? I forget what it was. And then wrestling was towards the end of the school year. And I saw the guys making fun of him on football till he gained that respect. And then here we are, basketball, and here's Eric coming on the basketball court, and the same thing, different group of guys. Now it's the basketball players, like, oh, what are you going to play? And, they're like, oh, he's our water boy. He's our towel boy.
Right.
They gave him all that. But then again, Eric was so like fundamentally minded in everything that he did that he didn't care what they said. All he wanted to do was prove them wrong, and he did.
Right.
He ended up being our point guard when we played, because he's small and he's quick and he can handle the ball. He did the same thing when we played baseball. You got these group of guys who are like, oh great, what's he gonna be? And then they call him the bat boy, they call him all this stuff. But he ended up playing catcher. So when you mentioned the story about being catcher, he ended up playing catcher. And that's funny with him is because the batters, he would squat every now and then, but he was small enough to where he can just bend his knees a little bit.
Stand up.
Yeah. And he was right where the pitcher wanted him to be.
Yeah.
And he told, the umpire was like, aren't you going to squat? And he's like, is there a rule that the catcher has to squat? The catcher just has to catch the ball. Then the umpires were like, I guess there is no rule. So the batters were like in the back of their heads, they feel this guy standing up, and they're like getting, they're so focused on him that they're forgetting that the pitcher's throwing them pitch.
I know.
So
then that's a great weapon to have.
Yeah.
Not only that, just in the fundamentals and physics of that, when you're not squatting as a catcher, you're able to turn to third or turn to second or first faster.
Yeah.
And so if you got a little bit of an arm on you and you can get that turn to happen, that's a lot less time to get out of the crouch.
Yeah.
And it's you used everything, Eric sounds like, well, and obviously you have to be a very calculated person if you're not the, quote unquote average or norm as an athlete.
Yeah.
And so, you use every little facet that you have to the best of your ability. So if he's not down in the crouch, that's actually a benefit in a way, where an average size player, it's not going to work because they're how far off of, what the strike zone is.
Yeah.
It's going to be awkward. Yeah. It's not even, it fundamentally isn't in their best interest. But yeah, I totally can empathize with that. It's hilarious that, not hilarious like as a punchline, but it's to be able to relate to that, and you have such an awesome resource. I mean, in friend and those experiences. That's the other thing. And not to sound like, the second coming of anyone, but I think that when people get to, whether it be a little person or anybody that's got some type of physical challenge, when others get to experience that indirectly and be around, there's such a great appreciation, but also a great maturation for that individual to be, like you said, when we would play other teams, there's the laughter and the jibs and the little jokes and the points and the snickers. And at first it would get to you, it would get to me. But then I realized, wait a minute, I'm going to use this to my benefit, to my, gain and get in their heads. And then they're like, wait a minute, he can hold his own. We better watch out. Yeah. And so, that's another tool to use, because they're, that cockiness that came from, what's this little fella going to do? I'm sure he just holds on to the water ball, or he's the water boy, like you said, or he's in charge of picking up the bats. Yeah. And then when you showed them, and they're like,
Eric has a good game-winning story for you. I'll tell you the story is that we're playing basketball. We're playing junior varsity. We're not on the varsity team just yet, but we're playing junior varsity. It was the game right before the playoffs, and we were either going to be in the playoffs or we were just going to not play the rest of the season. There was about 5 or 6 seconds left. We were down by 1 point, so we just needed a basket. We didn't need a three. We just needed a basket, and we knew they were going to come out and play tight. So the coach is like, hey, guys, what do we want to draw up? And then I said, put Eric in. And the coach, everybody's looking at me like, freaking crazy? I'm like, the whole game, whenever he has the ball and he's about to shoot, everybody gets away from him and they stand waiting for the rebound, or they turn their back and they're waiting for the rebound because they know he's not going to shoot. He's never shot. He was a passer. But Eric can shoot. He can hit the basket whenever he needed to. Then Eric looks at me and he's like, what are you doing to me? And I looked at him. I'm like, this is your moment. This is what you've done. This is what we practice. Shoot the ball. I said, we have 5 seconds left. They're going to play us like glue. They're going to hit us. The coach's mind was, let's play an inside game. Let's try to get a foul. Let's try to win it on the free throw line. And I said, that can work. But this right here, I guarantee as soon as he touches the ball, they're going to back away from him. And he's going to have either a 10-footer or a 15-footer to make. It's one of the two. Right. So the coach, after a while, during this timeout, everyone's like, let's give it to Eric. So here we are, or I wasn't on the court at that time. Here they are coming out on the court. And then the opposing team is looking at, why are they putting this guy in? This game. So they pretty much already said, all right, we're going to win. We're going to the playoffs. Our center inbounded the ball, gave it to our guard. Guard gave it to Eric. Eric is standing at the free throw line. And right when we said that, everybody turns away from Eric, walks away from Eric. They're looking up at the hoop because they're wondering what he's going to do. And he shoots the ball. And then the buzzer rings and the ball goes in. And it's like, wow. Eric was just like, oh my God. And then we did the wrong thing. We tried to carry him. We tried to put him on our shoulders. But it's like, he's a little heavy. So
yeah, he's solid. Yeah. Very solid.
Yeah.
But that, if I can add to that, that's an awesome story. And I'm so awesome. This is so awesome that we can talk about these things because you have that connection. Yeah. You have such relatability. But in that, what you just said, I would get the ball and they would back off a little bit, almost as if to say, there's no way.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no way. We don't even have to worry about this little dude. And then the idea was, okay, so you're playing 5-on-5 basketball, obviously. We're going to go 5 to the hoop. We've got 5 defenders now that even if he tries to throw this up there and it ain't going to make it, it ain't going to happen, we're going to rebound.
Yeah.
We've got more rebounders now. We've got 5, and we can go in tight in the paint. We can be right there. If they're playing, man to man, they can pull one back. They can go, they do a 2-3 zone, whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
That attitude was, well, this little dude here gives us a better benefit at the glass.
Yeah.
And so for you, that game plan of give it to Eric, they're not going to touch him.
Yeah.
He's going to do this because he's going to lock in.
Yeah.
I used to do that a lot myself. I'm thinking about not so much in the games, but when we were playing in like PE or playing in like, just a scrimmages, for fun, during the high school years. I remember the coach saying, and it was a great compliment, but I remember him saying, whenever Aaron's got the ball, he's 10, 12 feet, he's going to lock and he's going to make it every time. He'll lock into that position. He's got the same form down. He hits it, and he's going to be in. If you give him the ball and no one's there, I mean, granted, if you go up in his face, he's going to have to maneuver around you, or he's going to have to get rid of the ball. But if he's got a few feet on you, he's going to take the shot and he's going to make it.
Yeah, yeah.
The ball went in a lot, and it was fun.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
I mean, we used Eric as our secret weapon in a lot of the sports that we did. And, of course, you see this little guy coming on the field, and, the crowd is like, okay, what are they going to use him for? What's he going to be? We had this one, it was a football game. It was just, it was a football game. It was a kickoff return. And I was the guy who was supposed to return the ball, but I said, hey, let's do this game plan. As soon as we get the ball, we had the first 6 front lines. They were guarding to make sure that nothing happened. But me, Eric, and then 3 other guys got in this small little huddle. One, and we have these guys coming towards us, right? And then they know I'm the one running the ball. So as soon as they get 10 yards away from us, we break. Eric is standing there with his back turned. And I said, I'm going to run to the right. Joe, you're going to run to the left. Steve, you're going to run up the middle. And then Eric's just standing there with his back turned. So sure enough, these guys are following us. And they're not looking at Eric because he's like, okay, this little guy has his back turned. So as soon as they're following us, you hear like Chris from the other side going, go, 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 go. Eric turns around. He has a little ball in his hand, and he's running up the field. And then half the team is like, where the hell is he? Who has the ball? And here's Eric. He's running like, he ends up gaining like 40 yards.
It's the ultimate decoy.
You can hear the fans like, whoa, where'd that trickery come from? Exactly. Yeah, it was. It was one of those things. Of course, the coach is mad at me. Coach is like, hey, what the hell was that? And that wasn't the game plan. I'm like, hey, we got 40 yards out of it.
We got 40 yards.
He goes, it worked. And of course, you're giving Eric that confident that like, wow.
Right. You're playing. I mean, play what you consider a weakness. Play it to your strength.
Oh, we did. I mean, the fun part about playing with Eric, with a guy in that stature that he is, was he was serious about his sport. He didn't want to use his height as a disadvantage. But at the same time, when we had a plan that we wanted to use his height, he was game. He was like, I'm down. Let's do it. Let's do it. He didn't do the whole, what is it? Because I'm a small guy, this is the reason why we're doing it. No, he would come up with plays that he thought would work, in situations where we have to do something like this. And half the time it worked because, he said, hey, I'm a distraction on the field. Use that against them. Put me there. And then there's times where he's lined him up as a wide receiver, and, the guy would not even cover him. They would cover the bigger, taller guys. He would run a small route, and he would get wide open because no one's watching him. And then we just dump the ball to him, and here's 5 or 10 yards. So
that's the whole thing. I was just about to say that. I didn't play like in a competitive. We just played intramural football, like flag or whatever. But I was always like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, put him out on the side, put him wide out, and we need 3 or 4 yards.
Yeah.
No one thinks he's there.
Yeah.
And just go quick wide right, go 4 or 5 yards, done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was I sprinting 40 yards, 50 yards, 60 yards? No. Yep. But was I, here and there? Oh, we need, yep. And no one thought about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and he was good. He was a good defense. He played linebacker with me, and I would just tell him, hit the legs. And as soon as you hit the legs, I'll be up there and I'll hit him on top, and it worked out. And, there's times
you wrap around the legs, no matter how big they are. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, if they're, 350, that's different.
Yeah. I can't even do that.
Right. If you're wrapping around the legs, they're going to tumble.
Yeah, and that's what he did. He would come there. We were known as the knockout crew. So it was me, Eric, and this other guy named Billy, and we played the 3 linebacker position. Eric played one of the outside linebackers. As soon as he would see somebody coming, he would go for that guy, hit the legs. Me and Billy would come and finish him off. And
That's awesome.
it was one of those things where it always worked. So they always try to run away from us, or they would always try to throw over us because they knew they couldn't run towards us. So it was a good deal. And again, I loved playing with Eric. And when I graduated and he wasn't there, and I was like, oh man, kind of wish you were here, But then his little brother was on, and he was like, I have to show this little guy, the tricks and the trades.
Yeah, right.
But the good thing about him is Derek was his brother's name. Derek had the respect of everybody because of Eric.
Eric.
Yeah. But Derek wasn't as athletic as
not to be corny or anything, but it's that David and Goliath approach.
Yeah.
What do you have? What are your strengths?
Yeah.
And use them, and you can compete. You can, hold your own.
But that made me realize, when I first met Eric and he wanted to play football, my mentality was like, yeah, right. Yeah, right. What can you do? But he turned that around in a day. When he showed me what he can do, made me realize, and I'm not the tallest guy in the world. I'm not, I'm probably the shortest next to Eric when he came on the football field. So I had to prove myself as well. And, I have to show these guys, and me and him, they call us the twins because it's Eric and Eric. And we were doing what we had to do to prove to the school that we're not just these small guys, but we can actually play the sports that we want to play. And, and I told Eric, I don't think I would have been able to done this with you. Then he was like, no, there's no way I would have done this without you. He told me that. And I'm like, hey, this is what we're here for. So I was humbled. And it makes me, like when I met you the first time, I didn't look at you as a small guy, a little guy. I looked at you as an actor. And I said that this guy's an actor. This guy, he's doing what he has to do. And it was all because I already knew someone, who was small. And I already knew what you guys can achieve. And, I don't like people when they say like, oh, he's a small guy. What's he going to do?
Well, I thank you for that. And I won't, I know we're coming to a close here. I don't want to take much more, but I want to, maybe we can close on this. That's an awesome compliment.
Yeah.
That's an awesome perspective. And the fact that, no matter who you are, I from this podcast, I hope that people take things universally. It's not just about a little person. It's about just a unique perspective.
Yeah.
But some of my greatest moments, or some of my moments that I'm very proud of, where you received accolades or compliments or respect for what I do as an actor, I'll never, and I don't know if I've said this already, and if I have, I apologize, and I don't mean to reiterate it, but it's obviously left an impression. We did a production in grad school, and I remember one of the audience members saying, you're just so in that moment, and as that character, I didn't even consider. I mean, your stature wasn't anything to it. It wasn't an inhibitor. It wasn't a distraction. It wasn't. It just you're good at what you do.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, for anyone, no matter whether it be gender, whether it be race, whether it be disability. When whatever it is that the average individual would consider you, quote unquote, abnormal or subpar or whatever the adjective you want to use, whenever you are beyond that and you're improving yourself as a human being who's got intellect and has, perseverance and determination, when that is what stands out first, then it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
I'm not ashamed of who I am as a little person. I'm not, don't get me wrong. There'd be days where I'd like, hey, I'd like to try this outside of this shape and see how different it would be. But I've said to people on more than one occasion, and I still stand behind this, if I had the choice to change, would I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think I would. I've learned a lot about life, and I've learned a lot, and some things not so easy,
Yeah.
some things absolutely devastating, but I've learned a lot about, determination and perseverance and tenacity. And so when it comes to like sports, that was a great lesson. Like you said, people make judgments and then they have to
Yeah.
step back and go, oh,
Yeah.
whoops.
Exactly how it is. Yeah. Yeah.
He or she is handing it to me because I thought he couldn't keep up, or she couldn't do this, and so it's a great experience and lesson learned.
A lot of the things that Eric got when we were playing sports, and I love this comment, is I didn't think he can do that. I didn't think he can do that. I mean, from football to baseball to golf to everything, he's like, I didn't think he can do that. And then we would always say, well, now you do.
Yeah.
Now you do.
I remember I got a little bit of that, especially golf, but also in like basketball. I remember because, like I said, I didn't play in high school, but I would, just scrimmage and what have you.
Yeah.
And I remember in college, we were doing intramurals or whatever. And I remember this one kid going, yeah, there's no way you can hit there. And I'm like, okay, let's try it. Yeah. And I hit, I think I took 5 shots and I think I hit 2 or 3 out of the 5. And he's like, he just kind of froze. And it was almost like it was make-believe, like it wasn't really happening, like he was imagining it.
Yeah.
Because he's like, did he just shoot from there?
Yeah.
And then I did it again. And he's like, and then he threw the ball back like a third time. He's like, do that again. And I'm like, kept hitting him. And then he's like, okay. And the respect in that moment, just of hey, you got it. So yeah.
This has been fun. It was fun talking about it. Before we get off, I want to throw a quick shout out. And I told her I'll mention her. Her name is Peggy. Met her at my clinic. She's a little person who, out of nowhere, when I was taking her intake in the room, and she okayed me to say all this. When I was taking her intake in the room, she said, I want to thank you, Eric. And I'm like, for taking your information? She goes, no, I listened to your podcast with Aaron, and I just want to thank you for giving us a voice of the things that we want to express. And she was using the word us, little people. And she was saying, for giving us a voice of the things that we want to say, but we can't say because we don't want to be, any more little than we are. So thank you for that. Thank you for what you and Aaron are doing.
Peggy. That's
great.
So
I told Peggy, I'll give you a shout out for listening. She watches us on YouTube and she listens to us on the daily podcast, or the Diary of the Little Man's podcast as well. So Peggy, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Peggy.
Throw us a comment on YouTube so that way Aaron can
please.
see who you
Huge
are.
props.
Yeah. So
and I would love to. Maybe could we get Peggy involved with one of the podcasts down the road?
Yeah, I don't think Peggy would.
Crazy.
I don't think Peggy seems like a nice little shy, person who was, yeah. I don't think.
Well, we can get a Q&A going. We can get, have her throw a question or throw a comment, and I appreciate it greatly. That's awesome.
No,
and,
it felt that at that moment, Aaron, I'm not going to lie to you. At that moment when she said that, I felt the whole podcast, the whole story that we did. I was like, wow, it's actually reaching to people.
Yeah.
In the little stature that we're
in that moment. It makes it all worth it.
Yes.
Not. Oh, sorry. I got an unstable connection for a second there. Sorry. And not to, I don't know if you heard what I said. In that moment, her comment or her observation makes all of this worth it. So thank you, Peggy. That's that alone. It's just being able to voice what I feel needs to be heard. And I'm not the only person. I don't want to be the chosen spokesperson. I'm just saying, here's my experience.
Yeah. No, it was good. It was fun. And she did say that, it made me feel like I wasn't alone in the world. And I said, that's a good feeling. And I thank you for the support, and I thank you for listening. But yes.
Cheers to Peggy.
Cheers to Peggy. This has been fun. I loved what we talked about. Awesome. Loved what we did. Loved how we just shared the stories. Can't wait for next week. I know you're going to go off and finish the final round of the Masters?
Yeah, the live coverage starts here at like in an hour and a half ish. Yeah. And I've been watching like the previous days, and it's I love golf, and so it's It's a great, to me, it's very entertaining. Some people are like, how can you watch that? It's so boring. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm thinking about the sport.
Yeah.
I've played it since I was 8. I can understand it very well. I understand where they are, in each hole and what they're doing or what they're trying to do. And also with everything that's involved, like I said, it's cold, and that's the other thing people don't understand. Grass acts differently on putting greens when it's cold or it's warm. And when it's cold, it's slow.
Yeah.
When it's wet, it's slow. When it's hot, it's razor fast. If it's maintained well, and these courses are maintained to the best of any greenskeeper's abilities, so you're really getting amazing elements, and all of that's part of it. It's like life, man. And not to get too philosophical, but it is.
It is. Yeah, it is.
There are so many factors that contribute to each day.
Yeah.
Everything that we do. So, I'm going to head back to the Masters in a minute. It's been awesome talking.
It was fun.
Today.
It was great.
Sports.
Yeah.
We hit the sports.
We did. We got it.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Stay tuned for next week. We'll talk. We'll let you guys know what we're going to talk about next week.
We'll open up in the middle of the week.
But until then, thank you guys for listening. Again, you can join us on YouTube, the Diary of the Little Man's Podcast on YouTube, and we're available on all podcast platforms, Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple. So go ahead and listen to the podcast there. But until next week, thank you for listening. This is the Diary of the Little Man's Podcast. See ya. You've been listening to the Diary of the Little Man's Podcast.